Welcome everybody to Forza Motorsport 7, and today we're taking a look at the 2017 Maserati Levante S. Now this is a car that started production in 2016 and is Maserati's first attempt at an SUV. It has air ride suspension that can raise and lower the body nearly 3.5 inches either way, which gives it some sense of off-road capabilities along with the off-road, the really rather large tyres, but I quite frankly can't see anyone who buys this taking it off-road unless it's for a laugh, because yeah, it's a bit of a weak attempt at an SUV, and I understand that it is Maserati's first attempt, but it's not like they don't have a big, budget or company behind them, because obviously they're owned by Fiat and Chrysler. So yeah, it's a bit of a disappointment, though it does have some plus points going for it. I do like the look of it in some areas. It certainly looks a lot different than some of your SUVs that are out there. It's got a pretty nice engine, which is Ferrari derived, and something that Maserati has used in several of their other cars, like the Ghibli for instance. And yeah, it's got a decent interior as well. Obviously not everything that I've just said matters in terms of this game, but yeah, as plus points go, there are okay ones, but compared to a few of the cars that I'm going to compare it against on this game, it's a little bit less rosy when you compare it against them. I'm going to compare it against the Volvo XC90, the Jaguar F-Pace, and the Porsche Macan Turbo. So yeah, just as reference. And but in all honesty, I was expecting this to be somewhat like the Alfa Romeo Stelvio, which obviously isn't on this game. But I was expecting this to be just as lightweight, just as spirited in Italian ways, and just as fun to drive as it evidently looked on that Top Gear episode where it was driven by Matt LeBlanc. But unfortunately, it's not really any of that quite, to be honest, and that's despite the fact, like I said, it has a Ferrari-derived engine, which is, on its own, a fairly decent thing. It's got 424 horsepower, 427 pounds-feet of torque from a 3-litre twin-turbocharged V6 engine, which on paper sounds plenty of power and torque. It's certainly more power than both, well, all the other cars that I'm actually comparing it against. It's more power than the XC90 by 24 horsepower, more power than the 24 horsepower more than the Macan, and a full 44 horsepower more than the Jaguar F-Pace. Does have less torque than both the Macan and the XC90 though, but it does have far more torques than the Jaguar F-Pace by nearly 100 of them, so it does have that. But the real downfall of this car is the weight. Yes, it weighs less than the XC90, but it weighs about 400 pounds more than the Macan, and more than 600 pounds more than the F-Pace. The XC90 does weigh more, but thanks to the fact that it has a fairly decent amount of torque, about 40 or so more torques, it's kind of offset, and yeah, kind of makes it a bit more of a fast vehicle off the line, which is what these cars are all about when it comes to 0 to 60 times, because obviously they have all-wheel drive. But yeah, to really explain why this car's a bit of a downer and a bit more average than I would have liked, we're going to have to take it out onto the track and see what it can do. So see you when we get there. So we're at Hockenheimring full circuit for a couple of laps, just to see what this Maserati is all about, but it's not all about that much, to be honest. So yeah, let's just see what it can or can't do, and then compare it against the three vehicles I am looking at. So yeah, as you can hear, pretty nice sounding engine. But again, you can get this engine in the Ghibli saloon car, which is obviously a lot better in terms of handling, a lot sportier, and actually lighter than this. So even though this is obviously based on that Ghibli, so yeah, it really does come across as something that is not necessary and has no real advantage over the likes of the Ghibli. Maybe it's a little bit more roomy in terms of the boot space. Obviously, it is a bigger car, but you can still only get 5 people in it. It's not like you can get 7 like you can in the XC90, which also has a fairly big boot even when you have those 2 extra rear seats up. And it's not like it's any more roomy than the Macan or the F-Pace either, because both of them can also carry 5 people. So yeah, there's no real advantage in that department. Obviously, it's no real advantage in terms of off-roading, because I really doubt this can do any off-roading whatsoever. If it can, then all hats off to it, but I really doubt it's going to be able to beat the likes of Range Rover or the Porsche Cayenne. And in terms of 0 to 60 times, it's also a little bit disappointing in that as well. 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds, and 0 to 100 in 12.281 seconds, going on to a top speed of 178 miles an hour. Now that top speed is faster than all three of those other cars that I am comparing this against, but it's 0 to 60 time, it's actually down on the Volvo, despite that Volvo having more weight and less power by 0.1 of a second. It's pretty much exactly the same as the F-Pace, again, despite that car having less power and way less torque. And it's far slower than the Macan by nearly a second, because I can do it in 4.184 seconds. So, yeah, it all comes really down to the weight of this car, quite frankly. If it weighed about the same as the Macan or the F-Pace, then it would not only be quicker in terms of straight line speed, but also far better in terms of handling as well, because you can really feel the weight, you know, on that air ride suspension, just ruining everything, quite frankly. And that's pretty much the case for every SUV that's kind of based off a saloon car that the same company has done, like the Panamera for the Macan, or the XK for the F-Pace, or the Volvo S40 I think it is for the Volvo. So yeah, but unlike those cars which have an advantage, this has neither. The Volvo, for instance, looks great. I really like the engine propulsion systems that it's got going for it, because obviously it has a supercharger, turbocharger and a hybrid system, and it's insanely practical, like I said, carries 7 people, has a large boot even with those rear seats up. The F-Pace looks great as well, has very little in the way of weight for an SUV, and has a nice V6 supercharged engine. And then the Macan, which handles brilliantly, has decent looks, not the best, certainly not as good as this Maserati or the F-Pace and Volvo, but decent looks nonetheless, and handles really rather well, because it is really rather a sporty SUV. And obviously it's quicker than this in terms of acceleration. So yeah, I think Maserati has played a bad hand here for their first SUV. Now there is good news, there is a V8 version of this called the Trofeo, but that isn't on this game. But it does have plenty of power, certainly would be able to rival the likes of the Range Rover or the Porsche Cayenne. But my feeling is that because this car doesn't handle all that great, having a much heavier engine up front and even more power will just expose its handling flaws, and obviously the amount of weight that it has to deal with. So yeah, I was really looking forward to this car when I saw it in the car pack. Like I said, I was hoping it would be like the Alfa Romeo Stelvio, but it just does not quite cut it. Obviously, like I said, it does have its advantages. I think it looks pretty good in certain areas, like the interior, and the engine, like I said, is a foray derived engine and does sound quite nice. But because it has to deal with this amount of weight in this kind of car, that engine is just kind of pegged down a fair bit, where it becomes a little bit irrelevant, quite frankly. It just cannot be used to its maximum potential. So yeah, an all-round disappointment, but as a first go for an SUV from Maserati, it could have been a lot worse. But quite frankly, I just don't think it's worth ruining their reputation. Obviously it's going to be a big seller. SUVs these days selling by the million, quite frankly, and I'm pretty sure plenty of people would like an Italian Maserati SUV, but compared to the competition, it just doesn't quite cut it as far as I'm concerned. And at the end of the day, there's so many of these cars out there right now. I mean, even Aston Martin are looking like they're going to get into the SUV market, that it's just not quite special or unique enough or usable enough to, you know, stand out from the crowd. Personally, I'd have the Volvo. It's easily one of my favourite SUVs on the game and in real life, and it's certainly one I'd have, especially if you've, you know, got kids. Because an interesting fact for you, 50,000 of those have been sold in the UK since 2002, and not a single person has died using them or being a passenger in them, which, quite frankly, when you consider how good looking that car is, how practical it is, how innovative it is, and how decently fast it is, especially in comparison to this Maserati, it's just a no-brainer, really. That Volvo really is just king of the hill as far as I'm concerned. Obviously it could be faster or more powerful, but as an all-rounder it is a great car, and makes this Maserati look like a damp squid, quite frankly. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.